Okay, so first deep dive, we're looking at a riddle that's, well, it's forged in stone, and then it was just swallowed by the ocean. Talking about the Yonaguni Monument. It's this massive megalithic structure off the coast of Japan that looks, for all the world, like a sunken city.
It really does.
I mean, it's got precise steps, 90-degree corners, these huge, vast platforms.
And that's why it is arguably the most fiercely debated artifact in all of marine archaeology.
I can see why.
Because our sources, they present two just starkly different narratives. You have, on one side, this is a geological freak show, just, incredibly specific, random erosion.
Right.
Or it's the footprint of a forgotten prehistoric civilization.
And that's really our mission today, isn't it?
Yeah.
We want to sift through the evidence that both sides are using, the geologists, the archaeologists, to figure out what exactly makes this site such a huge enigma.
Yeah, we have to get past just the initial impression.
Exactly. We need to unpack the technical details that are keeping this whole argument alive. We want to know, what specific geometric precision makes this thing so hard to explain away as just nature.
Well, the visual evidence is, it's just immediately overwhelming. When you first see descriptions of Yonaguni, you are dealing with a structure that is roughly 500 feet long.
Wow.
And about 130 feet wide, and it just rises from the seabed like a massive stepped pyramid. It is monumental in every sense of that word.
Monumental, yeah. But let's tackle the geological counterargument right away.
Okay.
If it's natural, how does nature create something that looks so purposefully built?
So the leading natural explanation, it centers on this concept called jointing pattern.
Jointing patterns.
Yeah, and this is a feature, it's pretty common in specific types of rock like columnar basalt or certain sandstones, where stress or cooling causes the rock to fracture in these regular straight lines.
Okay, so it can create straight lines naturally.
It can. It often produces right angles. So geologists, they look at the images and they say, look, we see jointing just on a massive scale.
That sounds pretty compelling on the surface.
Yeah.
But, if nature can just make right angles, why are so many scientists still pushing this artificial hypothesis? This is where it gets really interesting for me.
Right.
It's got to be about consistency and intent, not just a few isolated corners.
Precisely. The argument shifts from the possibility of a straight line to the sheer improbability of hundreds of repetitive symmetric elements all happening together.
All stacked and integrated.
Stacked and integrated. Across this huge horizontal plane, for instance, you look at the features that people who've mapped the site describe. Yeah. You don't just have repeated 90-degree internal corners. You have these consistent, straight passageways.
And large, smooth surfaces that form these very distinct terraces.
Yes.
It's that repetition, the uniformity across so many platforms that seems just impossible to dismiss. The source's detail steps, hundreds of them, that are cut with such regularity that they just look like a massive staircase.
And water erosion doesn't do that.
No. It tends to create curves and, scalloped edges. It doesn't usually produce stair treads that are almost identical in height and depth for dozens and dozens of meters.
And we have to look at the specific features that go beyond just basic geometry.
Such as?
Well, divers have identified a feature they call the recessed wall, which runs along one side of the main structure.
Okay.
And also what some people interpret as a carved petroglyph.
A petroglyph, you mean like a rock carving?
Exactly. A massive turtle-like relief figure, supposedly.
Well, a petroglyph is an undeniable sign of human manipulation. Right? That would basically close the case, wouldn't it?
It would. It would, if its interpretation were, undisputed. Skeptics argue the petroglyph is just another example of erosion highlighting natural cracks.
Oh.
And that the recessed wall is just an exaggerated joint line. But the fact remains, these features, they look exactly like purposeful carvings or architectural finishing.
And the material itself, that adds weight to the artificial argument, doesn't it? Yonaguni is mostly fine-grained sandstone and mudstone.
Right. And while jointing does happen in that kind of rock, it typically doesn't produce the hard, sharp edges that we see described there.
So if this were volcanic basalt or something, the natural theory would be a lot easier to buy.
Much easier to swallow, yeah. But cutting these precise geometric forms into softer sedimentary rock, that suggests deliberate effort. It suggests tooling.
It suggests planning and tools and a culture that could actually pull off large-scale engineering.
And when divers examined some of the internal cuts, they reported seeing what looked like tool marks. Not the smooth break you'd expect from a natural fracture, but signs of abrasion and shaping.
Nature doesn't use abrasive tools to sculpt things.
No, it does not.
So this inherent technological capability,
Mm.
it forces us to ask the hardest question of all. If this construction required deliberate engineering, when did that technology even exist?
And this is where the timeline becomes a real head spinner.
Yeah.
Geological estimates, based on sea level changes and just how deep it is, they suggest that if Yonaguni was built on dry land,
Which it must have been.
it would have had to have been constructed during or even before the end of the last glacial maximum, and that puts the structure's age at potentially over 10,000 years old.
10,000
Yeah.
years ago. To put that into perspective for you, that timeline just, it fundamentally challenges the accepted start date of civilization itself.
It absolutely does. When
Yeah.
we talk about the birth of civilization, systematic organization, large-scale construction, the labor needed to build monuments like this, we traditionally point to the Neolithic period.
So maybe 7,000 years ago?
Exactly, with the rise of agriculture and settlements like Sumer or, the early dynasties of Egypt.
But if Yonaguni is artificial, that means we have a culture that was capable of large-scale, precision megalithic construction existing 4 millennia before the invention of widespread agriculture.
It's a profound chronological shift.
It really is. It
Yeah.
implies a complex, organized society that we just have no historical record for. None.
So it raises the question, right? Did large-scale human ingenuity actually predate the agricultural revolution?
A huge question.
Most archaeologists assume that farming was, the necessary prerequisite for large population centers and specialized builders. Yonaguni suggests that a complex, advanced culture, even a localized one, might have existed much, much earlier.
And it would have been supported by what? Rich marine resources instead of greenfield?
Perhaps. And that provides a really crucial context for how it was built. We're not assuming some ancient deep-sea construction project.
Right, of course not. We're assuming construction on dry land, probably a coastal area, somewhere around 10,000 to 12,000 years ago.
Precisely. At that time, global sea levels were dramatically lower. I mean, by as much as 120 meters or 400 feet.
That's an astonishing difference.
It is. The land all around Yonaguni was exposed, which makes construction entirely feasible. And then as the continental ice sheets melted,
And they melted rapidly.
the ocean slowly but just relentlessly reclaimed that coast, submerging the entire structure.
That makes the whole narrative much more chilling. It's not a construction failure, but a catastrophic environmental event that just erased an entire city or monument or whatever it was.
It's such a powerful reminder of how dynamic our planet is. You're looking at a structure that tells a story of survival and then eventual defeat against the slow, unstoppable force of climate change.
So if we accept this possibility of advanced construction 10,000 years ago, we then have to face the biggest challenge to the artificial theory, which is the lack of any other evidence. If a civilization was here, where are the tools, the broken pots, the daily garbage?
And this is the argument that keeps the geologists winning in a lot of academic circles.
I can imagine.
When you excavate an ancient city, whether it's Rome or a tiny Neolithic village, you find middens, waste piles, cooking hearths, tool remnants. The area around Yonaguni is strangely clean.
Why? After thousands of years of human activity, why would there be nothing? I mean, sure, currents could sweep away lighter stuff, but heavy stone tools or signs of habitation should still be there?
There are a few possibilities, but they all kind of push the boundaries of established archaeology. The first is what you just mentioned, the nature of the submergence, the material.
The soft sandstone.
It's soft sandstone. Anything organic, wood, bone, textiles is long, long gone. And the relentless currents over 10,000 years have scoured that environment clean.
But what about the tools they used to cut the stone? Were they made of wood?
No, they wouldn't have been. And this brings us to the second and maybe more plausible theory. Yonaguni was not a city,
What was it then?
a purely ceremonial religious landmark.
If it was purely ceremonial, though, why the elaborate, functional-looking steps and passageways? Why build something so massive just for a short ceremony?
Well, the scale itself may have been the point. Consider a site like Stonehenge, which required enormous labor but wasn't a permanent residence.
That's a good point.
If Yonaguni was built as a dedicated sea temple, maybe oriented towards solstice points or certain celestial markers, it might have only been occupied by priests or builders for short, intense periods.
Which would dramatically reduce the amount of domestic refuse left behind.
Exactly.
So we trade the sunken city narrative for a sunken cathedral narrative. Less domestic trash, more ritual importance.
Precisely. Archaeologists often argue that the structure is the primary artifact. The geometry and the precision, they tell the story of the builders, regardless of whether we find their pottery shards. And the presence of features like that large platform at the top, which really resembles a ceremonial stage or an altar, that supports this idea of a religious landmark.
So it seems like the artificial hypothesis, it has to rely on the idea that this civilization either existed way outside our known norms, using materials that haven't survived, or having a very specific non-residential purpose for this thing.
Or that the site was just completely wiped clean by the elements over millennia.
Yeah. It forces us into this binary choice, doesn't it? Do we trust the visual evidence of incredible repetitive precision that so strongly suggests design? Or do we stick rigidly to the rule that a site has to have cultural artifacts nearby to be considered artificial?
And the scientific community is split right down the middle because both arguments rely on a certain degree of improbability.
That's a good way to put it.
The geologists have to accept that nature created an almost perfect pyramid with perfect 90-degree internal angles consistently. And the archaeologists have to accept that an advanced pre-Neolithic culture left no trace of itself besides this single massive monument.
And what's so fascinating here is that the physical features are just so compelling. The step terraces, the seemingly chiseled drainage channels.
I've heard that even some geologists acknowledge that if these structures were found on land, there would be no debate.
Right.
They would immediately be classified as ancient human constructions. It's the depth and the age that are the only real anchors for the natural argument.
So what does this all mean when we kind of synthesize all the evidence? We have a structure that visually and geometrically just screams engineered. We have an age that places this engineering 4,000 years before history says it should exist. And then we have this frustrating absence of archaeological context, the tools and the trash that we expect to find.
It means we have to look at human history as potentially cyclical and deeply, deeply fragile. The story of Yonaguni isn't just some local mystery. It's a global challenge to the linear progression we assign to human development.
That's a huge thought.
We just assume this constant advancement from simple tools to complex societies. Yonaguni suggests that highly advanced regional cultures might have risen, built monuments, and then been completely erased by environmental shifts.
Before they could spread or leave any lasting evidence on dry land.
Exactly.
That's the powerful lingering image here. A civilization, sophisticated enough to plan and execute a massive structure like this, just completely vanished. Its fate wasn't war or famine. It was just the steady, unstoppable rising of the tide.
It also really encourages us to question the bias that's inherent in land-based archaeology.
How so?
We base our entire understanding of the past on what survived on exposed land masses. If the ocean swallowed a whole early phase of advanced civilization, what we call history might only be the second act.
Wow, absolutely. The terrifying part of the Yonaguni Monument isn't just that it challenges our history books, but that it confirms how much history the ocean is still guarding. Just think about what other advanced cultures, what other massive monuments might be lying undiscovered simply due to the vastness and depth of the sea. It suggests that every time we, raise the depth finder, we risk overturning our most established facts about who we are and where we came from.
And that profound uncertainty, that question of whether the ocean is hiding a complete advanced civilization whose story we never even knew, that is why Yonaguni will remain one of the greatest archaeological mysteries on the planet.
Yeah, for the foreseeable future, for sure. So we'll leave you with that thought. What knowledge about our deepest past lies just beneath the waves, waiting for the current to reveal it? And what history are we feeling defined